Hey, Suzanne.
Heli, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's so wonderful yeah, I really, what was it? I'm just like, I've lost the plot all of a sudden. Okay, let me focus.
Well, it's
It's the wee
wonderful
small
to
hours.
see. Huh?
It's the wee small hours for you, isn't it?
Oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, girlfriend.
Southern California, USA.
Whoa.
hmm What about
Hey,
you?
Jessica. Hello. How am I? It's interesting, did you choose this book?
No, I didn't. Uh,
Okay. because
Joe
because
loves
I
this
didn't
book.
because I didn't choose it either, and it's been driving me crazy the whole week having to read it.
Oh, you
um, but
know,
I
it-
well,
I was just going to say it brought back, it brought back memories, from digging into all of these books from the late 70s, 80s, from women of color, Chicana writers, African American writers, Nigerian writers, although I don't think there's a Nigerian author in this
no. So for
collection.
me, but that was it. It brought back memories and not good ones for me.
Ah,
So for me, it's this whole thing about Black women. Certainly, as a woman born in England, a huge amount of my struggle has been trying to get recognition for being English. So this book brought back all of that shit from the 70s when I was really young, and first hanging out with radical feminists and them all saying to me, read this. This is what you need to read to politicize you. And it's all about America. And
yeah.
I'm like, I don't see me here. Why are you giving me this? You know? So again, when I got the book, so first of all, it was kind of like, do you want to read something by Audre Lorde? And I was like, yes, 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 because she's got a really international perspective. And I don't know if you know, she spent a lot of time in Europe, particularly when she discovered the Afro-German women, so all of these women with
Oh, that's
African
awesome.
fathers and white German mothers, you know. So I had a lot of contact with them in the 80s and the 90s, and we did a lot of actions together because a lot of them became lesbians to avoid being kind of, eroticized and
Right,
by white German men. But a
right.
lot of our conversations in the Black women's groups were about how, lesbian women did the same thing with them anyway, So again, it was that whole thing about dealing with so there's a lot in the book about racism that just rings true. And then after we spoke on Tuesday, I went straight into a huge to do again with the issues that are in this book, again with a feminist organization I'm working for here. And it's like the experience of white people and the experience of racism in Europe are so different to what these women are writing about.
Right.
And I'm just like, what you know, I feel like a white woman reading it. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Right,
feel
right.
like I'm othered by the writing.
Okay, we're gonna have to unpack that. That that's a great lens. I mean, all of these writers, you have uh, Asian American, you have indigenous First
First
Nation
Nations
women,
women,
you have
and
Chicana women, which is
yeah,
a very specific, it's specified, not Hispanic or Latina, but Chicana
Chicana, exactly.
is more political. And then, of course, African American. And I think that, America, we think we're at the center of everything, even,
Exactly.
with racism and oppression and
Yeah,
all of that. And you have, all of these different ethnic groups. USA is like the belly of the beast. Not that nothing else happens anywhere else, but
well, that's how they feel, you
yeah,
know? So
absolutely.
I was getting halfway through, so we spoke Tuesday, And then Wednesday, this whole thing exploded here. And I was getting to the point where I'm a bit like, I am so irritated by these women's whining and the fact that nothing's fucking changed. 40 years down the road, we're having the same conversations, and we talked a little bit about this whole thing that it's like in that book, there's no discussion of because for me, as a British or English Black woman, for the vast majority of my life, what I experienced from white people was support. It was white people who educated me about racism, and the first time, I think we talked about this, the first time that I experienced sort of like direct overt racism was from an African.
Right.
So
right.
I'm dealing with this whole thing, it's just not reflected in this book until there was just this one. So I read your list about what you'd read.
Yeah.
And I got to the Pathology of Racism by Doris Davenport. And I just sat there giggling through so much of the first section of it. It just, made me laugh so much. And then I was like, who needs to see two Black women discussing Black women's writing from 40 years ago? Nobody. What we need to see is white women sitting here and talking about how it affects them to be described like this, about how they feel. That's radical feminism. This isn't.
Well, I think that we have, over time, you could tell this is, coming out second wave forward. Okay, Black women do need to talk to each other and process things. And we need to have these conversations with white women. It's white women. It's not either or.
No, I'm not saying
we need
it is.
to have these conversations with European women from Sweden, with European women from Germany, with Caribbean women from Trinidad. We need to have and deserve to have and platform diverse voices so that we can all unpack this stuff.
I'm not saying that Black women don't need.
Go ahead.
No, you, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, there is a lot to unpack from this time till now. I think that that Black women still need to be really clear what our sex-based issues are. How systems
That's a bit
impact.
What do you mean? Hang on, our sex-based issues?
Right. As women, we're women, melanated, that little dollop of some melanin. We're women. And how does it impact us? I personally experienced Black women complaining or saying how white women don't understand, and how white women have some blinders on with some things and da 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 da. And so I say, well, what are our issues? And then often the answer is, well, it's not white women. Okay, but what is it? So I'm always looking at structures and systems, and I could see how Black women are oppressed by certain systems, and like Native American women, in the United States, how systems harm them, like an inability to access water rights, how water comes through the Colorado River, and it's blocked off, and all of those struggles, just as one example. So to be able to identify, and then also to really acknowledge how much violence women experience inside of their cultures. How do you experience violence and oppression inside your culture when the men inside your culture say that they're oppressed and they are oppressive. So, these are things that, when, women of color or Black women, should have a right to talk about and to unpack.
Okay,
That
so,
is a few of the essays just touch on it a little bit here.
Okay, they do. I think, there's a lot of stuff that it's dipped into, because most of the book is just about, Whitey did this to me and Whitey did that to me, and I'm really fed up of that, and they don't do this and they don't see that, and bad, 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 bad white people. And that's not my experience. And then the bits of the books that were all like bad, 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 bad. My mum made a choice to bring us up isolated from a Black community, right? So this whole thing about I'm not saying that I didn't experience the oppression of Black men, but what happened was that when it happened, my mum went, right, we're out of here. Right? I know this, right? I know what happens, right? I would rather, and this is, I would rather that you dealt with racism, than the oppression that I've experienced in my life from Black men. And she always said to us, it's like, you're always going to be Black. And when you find good Black people, you will find a community there. That's been really difficult for me, and she said, but you need to learn how to operate in the white world. And the one thing that you don't need for that, is a Black man on your back. Right? And having said that, I come from
up.
Yeah, no, I mean, my mum and I, we still have really great conversations, but part of it is,
that's revolutionary, that's revolutionary. Yeah, so, because Black women and Chicana women and everybody is encased, whether right or wrong, but encased inside of their communities. Every community has a patriarchy, whether it's powerful, weak, smart, not so smart, impulsive patriarchy, thoughtful patriarchy, linear, whatever. And so you have women that are encased.
Yeah, see, but that's not my experience,
Right.
And so, my whole thing has been like, I spent the vast majority of my life with women in women community, and when I so also particularly coming to the Netherlands was the first time that I found a predominantly Black community to spend time with, because in the UK, the vast majority of Black people in the UK are Jamaican, and I'm Small Island, and they're bigots. I was like, I don't need to put up with the shit and your jokes about small island people, and of course that whole bounty thing, you don't speak right, yes, a bounty, Black on the outside,
Okay. What? Say that again. Bounty.
But it's a bounty is like a confectionery. What do you call it? A cookie?
Sugar?
No, it's like it's like chocolate with coconut in the middle. It's a sweet that we grow up with. A candy.
Are you an
that we grew
Oreo?
up with.
Black on the outside, white on the inside.
Our version of an Oreo.
Exactly.
Like it's a bounty bar. Yeah, a bounty. And because I grew up in bumblefuck UK, where we were the only Black family who lived in a small town of 60,000 people. Right. And there were two women who had mixed heritage daughters, and there were some Black doctors who came through, and that was it.
You know, when I was growing up, I'm Jamaican, and I came from the little island to New York in a very powerful neighborhood. Irish, Polish, Italian, Jamaican, Trinidad, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rican, everybody, Indian. Indians started coming a little bit later. And everybody was hot-blooded. Nobody said, I'm an American. Nobody. Yeah, you talk to an Italian, say, I'm Italian, I'm Irish, I'm Jamaican, I'm whatever, Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
And, I'm Jewish, I'm Puerto Rican. Nobody said I'm American. So everybody was hot-blooded. Everybody was ethno-centered. And, I think, and so that's a powerful experience to be around that and to observe how systems, infrastructure impacts groups.
It's crazy because when I went
response to structures, racist structures, sexist structures, classist structures.
Because for me, the whole thing is, it's like, so for years, I didn't call myself English. I only started calling myself English after I went to Australia, and I'd say something and they'd be like, no, you're a POM. No, you're a POM, right? Which is their term for an English person. And when I was in the States, when I went to the States, it was the first time I'd ever met so many people from the same island that my family come from. And they're all in one building. So the segregation that occurs in the States was mind-boggling to me. Because you say you grew up in an area with all of these different people, but I have never seen, so a POM it comes from apple. That's what the Australians call the English. But I had never seen such a massive segregation until I came to the Netherlands. So that system that you have there of sticking everybody who's from the same place in the same bits, that is from the Netherlands, and it's called zuilen, and where here they believe that you have more in common on a sort of a vertical structure. So the areas here originally were separated by religion, by a political belief, and that they took over wholesale to America, and you guys are still doing it. So when I went to the Bronx, I was in a building with only people from the Dominican Republic. But I said, I'm looking for the building with the Dominicans. And they sent me to the wrong building. They sent me to buildings with people from the Dominican Republic. And they were not happy to have me there. I couldn't see the difference, but they knew I wasn't one of them. So I'm a bit like, whoa.
Right. It's tribalism. Everybody clusters.
Really. Everybody in this book, there's only that one, and I read it after you said the name of it. Wait a minute. So the one was I think it's Pat Parker. I think it's neither neat nor pretty or quick. I think it was. That I read that this morning, and it was the last one that you mentioned. Because so for you, it's on page 238, and for me, it's on a completely different page that I forgot to write down.
Where she says, I am a feminist. I am neither white nor middle class.
Exactly. And I was like, when I saw that, I was like, I'm going to read that one. And I was like, yes. And she's the only one in the book that I've read so far, really, who's addressing the issues that still need to be addressed, who's looking at it that way. And what's really sad is that when I read that, I'm like, nobody did that, So
what do you mean? Where she talks about completing the ERA, like we have.
Yes, I didn't know what the ERA was, but but it was about we have to stop contributing and stop supporting capitalism. That we have to organize. And so being from the UK, we are 3.5% of the population. White people are 85% if you don't count white other. If you count white other, they're like 87, 88% of the population.
Right.
And in the States, they're only, it's just under 60% now, So it's more than possible for people of color to have a deep impact on the economy there, but they don't. And one of the things that I didn't agree with is she said, women can't change anything. But if all women got together and stopped, cock prioritizing, there's more than enough of us to turn the world around, but we don't.
Well, we have to see what our sex-based issues are. And we have to be able to see what impacts other women. See, if all you see is what is right in front of you, you can't see what's happening to other women. You can't see what's happening to other women and children. So that makes it very difficult for us to come together. I'll give you an example of something that happened in the United States. In the state of Michigan, Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, I know. Listen, my partner is a water specialist, so he's actually spoken to the mayor of Flint, Michigan, and had a meeting with him. Yeah.
The mayor woke up one day and flipped the water and sent in all this bad water filled with lead. Just no rhyme or reason, has poisoned an entire community. We have babies. So babies now with lead poisoning, they're going to need help for the rest of their lives because you experience all type of cognitive impairment, taking in and ingesting lead so early. A, how could that happen in an industrialized nation? B, this impacts women and children. Women and children are powerfully impacted by this negatively. People are going to require
everybody's
care.
impacted by water, Suzanne, and the fact is your water system sucks across the whole country. That's the whole thing, and it's not addressed. All of your water's filthy.
We have over 30 counties with terrible water, but this was on purpose. Click. Why would you do that? So then you want to look, how could that happen? Was this structural racism and classism? Was this done on purpose?
Well,
now we have
like
100. Now we have
still,
like
the water's still, look, the bottom line is the water's still not fixed. As I said, my partner's a water specialist but it's about so he said, I don't want to get into this one because I have information that I shouldn't. The bottom line is it wasn't done deliberately, and it's about the shitty state of the whole way that water is organized in the States, let's move.
The net is that women could not even feed their babies with clean water.
But that's standard for such a long time. Then we're looking back, but then, equally and more important, look, America is 20% of the world. You lot use so much more than your fair share of the world's resources. And there's no Black women not driving their fucking cars. I don't see, women making the effort to turn that around.
To turn what around?
To turn around the exorbitant use of the world's resources that America is.
So women over here who are not impacted by bad water is not thinking about what's happening to women and children that are. So full circle back to what you said earlier about how women don't come together. These are the things we don't think, wow, I wonder how it is for a mother and child to be dealing with this, even though I'm over here and I'm comfortable, you see?
And that was also the whole thing. So I'm reading this book and I'm reading, all of these academics, and as somebody who made a conscious decision not to go into academia, it's only ever been used against me. It's only ever been to my detriment, so, because I'm like, academia is what has brought us the situation that brought us together, this whole trans ideology, activism, that's come directly out of academia, and it's come out of academia from what were originally working class women in the 70s who came up through consciousness raising groups and feminist groups, and then decided to educate themselves. Okay, Lou, Lou says more women are impacted by poisons and toxins in the system than men are. I'll take the point and keep moving on, but the fact is, hang on, I've totally lost it.
Well, there's a question
just ranting.
Here. No, just real quick. It says, are women to blame for bad water? No, that was not the point. The point is for women to be able to organize. When you see that women are impacted in a certain way, we have to say, hey, this is not okay. This is impacting our children, and so forth and so on. A lot of times we think, oh, a woman issue, abortion. A woman's issue, XYZ. No, systems impact women and children negatively, and we should pay attention and speak up, even if the women don't look like us, even if the women have different experiences from us. One of the things that should this be written today, a lot of the women, they're pointing out some of the differences. There's a lot of talk about how white women don't get it, Well, let's talk about it here for a second. You have women of color, and I actually don't like that term, but for the sake of speaking about multiple different groups of non-white women, just for the sake of brevity, experience structural inequities along with sex-based issues with the men, their men in the community, along with dealing with white men or the Western men or the ruling patriarchy, however you want to.
Hang on, wait 1 second. Hold that thought. I mean, somebody just said, should we call them racialized women? But I think if you call it racialized women, then what that does is that actually totally negates white women's space in the oppression of people who in colorism. Colorism is something that you can call it because that affects everybody.
Mm-hmm. I just say if we're just making a broad statement talking about those women who are not impacted by double layers of patriarchy and something called the double bind. White women are not in the double bind, and white women are not impacted by double layers of patriarchy. In other words, her it guy, the guy who punches down to her, punches down to everybody.
Yeah.
But then Chicana women, Latina women, Native American women, African American women, and so forth, there's another layer there. The men inside their patriarchy who's trying to do their little flexing and I'm a man and I'm a man too. So, and all of those rules of engagement. So that's what, let's talk about why there's so many differences amongst us instead of complaining, really breaking it down.
Well, I mean, so it does, it's the chat is really distracting.
I know.
It's like sometimes it'd be really good to be able to just engage with what's coming up in the chat. But so for me, like
double bind. Let me say what double bind is.
Go.
Luce is asking this.
I know.
Question.
Yeah. Go.
Did you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Double bind means, and I'm going to use racialized terms for the sake of brevity. You are in the Black community and your Black male partner is beating you, okay, or he's trafficking girls, something like that. Then the community ends up with like a code of silence and puts the pressure on the woman sometimes that pressure is self-imposed. Don't call the police. Don't put a Black man in the line of fire with the white legal system, our justice system that was set up and built, the infrastructure was built by white men, by white patriarchy, by white supremacy, whatever you want to call it. So don't do it. Otherwise, you're a traitor. You're a traitor to your people. You're a traitor to your race. And the idea of your sex, your femininity, your womanhood, that is off the table. You're just melanin, you're just Black, and you are not to call the police.
It's not only,
so you end up being in a bind.
But as a working class originally, you know, as a working class Black woman, you get the same thing in Britain coming out of being working class. You know, it's like you don't call the police because they're just lackeys of the upper classes. You know, they're just there to protect property. So I think it's not, you know, it is a double bind, but it's a double bind that affects all women. I imagine also because, you know, the one thing that we know is that the so-called domestic violence affects all women of all classes and all colors. And I think in every class. So I've known, so, you know, my work is healing what is nearly always white women, because Black women don't want to pay me, you know? So, you know, I know upper class white women get the same shit when they get beaten up by their husbands. You know, yeah. I know Muslimas get exactly the same thing. Right. It's not only white women who don't report domestic violence, you know, it's the vast majority of women don't report it. And the whole thing is that, you know, women, we all know that women are most in danger when they make the decision to leave an abuser. That's when he's most likely to kill them.
Well, I'm looking here. It says something about the double bind, don't snitch. White America doesn't have a don't snitch culture. You know, but the perception
I'm not American. I'm not talking about America. That's what I keep saying.
Yeah.
You know, well, I've never enjoyed the culture whenever I've been there, you know, and I am so fed up of the Black experience being reduced to what Black Americans say about being Black. Because, you know, the fact is, I was just looking it up this morning, it's really funny. 90% of so-called Black Americans are 25% white or more. So when I got interrupted, I was like, because I was getting so pissed off, I went on to, like, so in England, it's called Who Do You Think You Are? And you've got this thing in America, which is basically just trying to sell DNA tests rather than actually explore people's backgrounds. So I went on that and started looking at sort of Black Americans, finding out who they were. So the first thing I noticed was, this is really super dubious because it's just about trying to sell people into taking DNA tests, which I think is like, whoa, why are you giving the white man, why are you giving the man your DNA to check out? You know, why would you do that? You know, but anyway.
Well, you know, it's going to be a business one of these days, that's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I'm looking at the Black Americans who, you know, who go and do that program and the pay. And it's like, it was a really weird thing because it was very emotional. It made me kind of cry. But it's like they're all looking to see, you know, about their slave history, about their slave ancestry, you know, and feeling the pain and whatever. And, you know, and there were a couple of people who found out that they were descended at some point from freed Blacks and all the rest of that kind of stuff. But I'm a bit like, you know, I feel a sympathy for it. I understand, but it's not where I'm coming from. You know, there's a book that I read that's called The Heart of the Race, which is by sort of Caribbean women in Britain and their experiences there. And that kind of spoke to me too. But if I look at my kind of peer group of Black women, you know, born in the UK, the vast majority of them are mixed heritage. You know, I loathe that term, any term that describes our mixtures that uses race. So that term biracial, which is still so prevalent, it makes my skin crawl. You know, it's like, it's all the things that we buy into. as soon as you buy into the notion of race, you're buying into your own oppression already,
Mhm.
you know? So why is it that Black Americans are never interested in looking at their white ancestors?
Well, I want to bring it back to this book here, because this is not just talking about race. It is talking about the intersect of race, class, colorism,
And homophobia,
having a
very
brown
importantly,
skin Latina
and
mother and you're a white passing
lesbophobia.
Latina, that type of a thing.
I get it, Jessica, but being ashamed, right, doesn't deal with the issue, and all it actually does is create a separation from the. So one of the things that really shocked people, so the poem of mine that I got to read on the BBC was like about that when addressing racism, you know, I said, we're all in denial that, you know, at some point, you know, any white woman who's being racist to me, especially if she's Scottish or Irish or Welsh, there's a really good chance that we have an ancestor in common, you know, because it was the Scottish, the Irish, and the Welsh who were the strong right arm of the English in the Caribbean. You know, the upper class English stayed at home and got the Irish and the Scottish to do their work. It was them who were beating and raping the Black women on the plantations. You know, Bob Marley's father was Scottish. Yeah, you know, it's looking at that kind of exactly. You know, apparently we've got quite a bit of Scottish, but whatever. Let's not go there because we have to be ashamed of our white roots. No, we have to use those as a foundation to create connection with, to be able to call out racism. You know, it turns out, what is it? 88% of white Americans have, you know, African heritage as well, you know, but they don't want to go into that. But we're supposed to be talking about the book, sorry. So you missed out homophobia, because one of the things that I really loved about this is that it deals constantly, you know, with the lesbophobia in all of our societies,
right,
you know?
Right.
And that's what gets called out a lot. And that is really key, you know, because so many women, white and women of color, in fact, more women of color, are so cock allegiant that any coming together of the sisterhood is impossible.
Right. Right. Well, we're separated by multiple levels. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
At the end, I would really like to take, I think it's about 90 seconds to read one of the poems in here. But so like going back to the book, you said going back to the book.
Wait, what?
I said at the end, I would like to take 90 seconds to read one of the poems in here.
Okay, okay. You know what? I wanted to talk about, okay, so in this hour, child, we cannot cover all of the, I don't think there's a Black person on the planet, probably, because of all the mixtures over time, over history, everything. I mean, it is what it
Africa, babe, Africa.
But
there's lots of them in Africa.
We can't discount people's experiences with, you know, structural sexism, structural classism, structural racism, and colorism. I mean, it is unbelievable. And colorism is maintained inside of people's culture. Some of the authors talked about this, but I wanted to touch on this interview with Louisa Tish.
Tish.
You know her, we know her.
We do, Tish. It made me laugh, but you know, sorry, but she's another cock allegiance.
well, let me tell you, she has a real juicy section in her interview. I want to read it. So who interviewed her was Gloria Anzaldúa.
Okay.
Who is one of the editors of this book. So it's two Chicana women, Gloria Anzaldúa and Sherry Moraga.
Yeah.
That are the editors, you know.
Yeah.
And so Luisa, oh, I just love her. She said, okay,
she's so
Mama,
cool, Tish.
Who the hell am I?
Yeah.
And she said, she talked about men and women. and how women can have a hold over men, because you mentioned being cock-centered. She said,
I said
she was
allegiance.
asked, what do you think men hold against women the most? I love this. And Tish said, well, specifically the question of women's blood. It's the one thing we have that they don't have. Now the uterus, the vaginal blood, the power of creation, the nurturing power that we have, the sustaining power that we have is something that they don't have. We know that. They are so womb envy, so jealous, it's not even funny. When I look into the charms and the spells, it's a very
I read
interesting
it.
interview.
I read it. Yeah.
Okay. And the charms involving women's blood, and then Gloria asked her, even the love potions? She said, yeah, it's for bending his will. You use women's blood to bend man's will. Of course, there's a great taboo against it. As long as men are involved, that's like Superman outlawing kryptonite. Of course he will.
I read that too, and I'm like,
I was like, Lord, if our menstrual blood, all of us could put it together and just take out the patriarchy, that would be the bomb.
Yeah, but you can't, you
So
know, but that's also not how magic works. But the whole thing is that it's about that whole thing about, like, you know, you use your blood to bend a man to your will. And that's long time known. You know, the first person who told me about that was a Black American man, right? Who was describing to me, it was talking to me about how powerful Black women had been at the turn of the century, when he said, you know, they called them cat houses, you know, and he says, and people saw them always as being like brothels. He said, but actually they were the place where you could go and get a bath, where you could get a good meal. They were also hotels, right. And you could also get, you know, he said, so, and that, you know, that it was Black women running them, usually with the money of white men who they'd magic potioned with their menstrual blood. So, you know, when I read that, it's just one of the things that just made me giggle hilariously.
I know, I did.
But it's not about bending men to your will. It's about us divesting our energy from them. You know, I'm not interested, you know, in controlling a man or bending him to my will. What we need, you know, is women who are allegiant to other women, who are prepared to divest their energy from men to move forwards. You know,
okay.
That's what we need. And look, as you know, I was a lesbian for 20 years, and I've been 20 years in a relationship with a white man, you know, so, and it was a conscious decision at the end of the day to choose this person who adores me, supports me, you know, and you know, it's like, oh, you're having another turfy call, he says, I'll make sure I don't even come into your side of the house.
Right.
If you're with the turf, you know? Well, he's never tried to hit me. You know, the shit that went down in my relationships with women was unbelievable, you know? And actually, in some ways, I was a bit like, I didn't feel kind of worthy of being in relationships with women, because it so easily descended into physical violence. It would start off with rows, and then, you know, if a woman hits me, I'm gonna fucking hit her back, you know. So it's difficult, you know.
Yeah.
Look,
people are responding to the term divestment. Divestment is a very powerful movement. That's right, Jessica.
Particularly amongst Black women. I ain't hearing no white women talking about divesting, you know? Right? You know, and it's like, it was really weird.
Or you are.
I'm not. Divestment it's seriously a Black women's issue. This is where it is, you know? It's like the number, I've heard lots of Black women saying, you know, like, look, I'm never going to be a lesbian, but if it's a case of choosing between a shitty Black man and no sex, I will choose no sex. Every white woman, heterosexual woman that I've tried to have that conversation with here, we're all like, why would I? You know, why would I deny myself the cock? You know, and it's like, because you're gonna get, you know, because you're gonna get more from than you know, Because if you can't give yourself a screaming orgasm, you shouldn't be sleeping with a man anyway. And the place to invest is with women, you know? And there's, and the low orgasm rates that they have anyway.
Orgasm rates.
Yeah. The highest rates of orgasms are in
women.
Look, the highest orgasm rates are in same-sex couples, and
That's
heterosexual women have notoriously low orgasm rates with men, but cock allegiant, that's what, yeah.
Well, divestment also is saying goodbye to toxic communities, toxic neighborhoods. I think your mom talked to you about that. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Divestment is saying goodbye. It's not just dick, if I may speak so clearly. It's not just that. It's also saying goodbye to toxic environments and environments that don't honor and respect you,
But the difficulty is that so many environments that women create are toxic. It's like, to go back to the book, because that's what we're supposed to do, and we haven't talked about the book at all.
Wait. Somebody said, I divested myself of PIV 17 years ago. That's all
good.
Right.
Yeah. I can't remember the last relationship I had where PIV was the center of my relationship with men. It's always been like, I always said to men at the beginning, look, actually, you can do lots of other things with it, but it doesn't necessarily need to go there, and it also ain't going in my brown eye either, But look, so the one thing that I think everybody here, that everybody in here will have read is probably The Master's Tools Will Not Dismantle the Master's House, by Audre Lorde, which is an amazing and seminal piece of writing, which I think, if you haven't heard about it and you haven't read it, shame on you. Why are you calling yourself a feminist? Because even though the letter is addressed to the white women at a conference, the content of it is seminal for all of our interactions with each other. But before that, there's in the compilation, there's an open letter to Mary Daly about the book Gynecology, which I think is so fabulous and which totally mirrors the experience that I was having this week in the feminist organization that I'm part of. And in that, it's what's kind of and it goes back also to what you said. It's one thing that we haven't done. It's like the British invented divide and conquer, in India, to deal with the caste system there. But then, so what they did was
everywhere.
They put India everywhere. So they put Indian people above us everywhere. And that's exactly what's happening. So in this organization where I'm basically experiencing racism, the instrument of the racism is a brown woman, and that's just so, and I have to say really clearly, it's not WDI. I love WDI. It's absolutely fabulous. And I think trying its really best to look into and find ways of challenging, the structural separations between us,
Right.
Yeah. Did I say I made my point? I guess, I don't know,
I'm looking at the chat, I'm listening, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh. Well,
so hang on, what was it?
I'm probably the only person out here that kind of sort of disagrees with Audre Lorde on this point here. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. I hear a lot of people in social justice spaces saying that.
I also heard when I went to the first Black European Feminist Conference in Edinburgh a few years ago, they were saying that as well. And that was another one of those conferences that I got pretty much kicked out of because they were selling the whole trans thing. And that's the other thing. Like neither of us have mentioned it, but that really stuck in my craw and gave me such a bad taste for the whole book. Because in the introduction to the second edition, you know, the writers and more of the women in the book see our trans sisters as being our saviors and the people who were going to help us carry the movement forward. And I, you know, when I read that, I was like, it's your fault, you know? Yeah. So that really
they invited them. They
let them in. So while in Britain, there was this whole thing about you guys, you don't come in here. It was again that cock allegiance, these poor, unhappy, you know, men. And the only way that they can escape horrible male culture is to come. No, they need to be out there changing male culture, you know, not hiding in our culture and giving us shit. And especially Black trans women drive me, like, you know, they're the closest I think I would come now to doing violence, you know?
Girl, don't say that. Girl, don't say they're going to edit
I said the closest. I said the closest, you know? So this is one of the things that's from Audre Lorde's open letter to Mary Daly. So one of the things is, so the question that arises in my mind, Mary, do you ever really read the work of Black women? Did you ever read my words, or did you merely finger through them for quotations which you thought might valuably support an already conceived idea concerning some old and distorted connection between us? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, doesn't that support the doesn't that kind of support what you've said earlier about kind of complaining? Like,
yeah,
you know, like, I'm like, okay, so Mary Daly used her own goddesses or her own imagery. I don't know. When I think about Black femicide, I love Rosa's work. She's exposing the violence and the domestic violence inside of the Black community. She is counting the numbers, and just in one Facebook page, she has taught all Black women to look in the mirror and be like, oh my God, like this is really happening in my community, can't hide it. Here it is, here are the pictures of the women, here are the pictures of the men in their mugshots if they didn't kill themselves. Bring to light what it is in your community, wherever you are. There's Black Femicide UK. It's great. It's great for Black, for Black Swiss women, Black Belgian, everybody to start talking to each other, find the commonalities and focus on that which might be just unique to your group. I even wrote a Dear White Woman article. Like, everybody's like, dear white women, dear white women, dear white women. It's time for women in their spaces to find out what is unique, what's happening, start talking about it, break through the barriers, and start talking.
I got excluded for writing Dear Black Women articles, and I got excluded for because I am a bit of a bigot. I make no bones about it. I was like, why is the Black movement in the UK basically decided and defined by what I refer to as white women's little brown dollies, So, I grew up in a culture where, my neighbors, working class white women, were like, we want to have what we would call mixed heritage babies because they're the best looking, So, my two next door neighbors, their daughters went out with two brothers so that their children would be beautiful and related, So it's always that space of, so what I have, women from mixed heritages, and that's a lot of the women in here, also academics, light-skinned women, and that moving through white society or passing and being sexualized as a term of your as the groundwork or the foundation of your oppression. I have my womanhood negated and denied because of my Blackness and because of how I look, and we didn't even get into this whole thing about, that we're still chasing whiteness, in terms of the way that we do our hair. When was the last time you saw a nappy head of hair, you know, not on a black man in the public sphere, on a magazine. You don't see it. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of natural sisters out there, but you know, colorism is a whole nother piece. And colorism,
it is.
Colorism impact, I mean, in one family, you can have a dark-skinned woman, a light-skinned woman, somebody that looks, you know, Puerto
the
Rican,
families that I have seen,
like.
you know, like if you look at Brazilians, they go
range.
across the board. You don't get, I've seen it a lot in Brazil, with Brazilian families, and I've seen it just like huge amount in Palestinian families. And that's something that, again, is not addressed in terms of the oppression that the Palestinian people are experiencing. You know, the first time I really saw, you know, a black person who was with a white person who was their direct bloodline, you know, from two light brown parents, you know, and everything in between. I was like, whoa.
Oh my goodness.
You know,
Hawaiian, you know, Hawaiian people, one, you know, two daughters, their hair could be at their
Manufa. It's true.
Another could have an afro, you know, so it's all, you know, it's all mixed up. But here, what Manfa is saying here, women want to look like.
Yeah, I just said to her, it's true. Yeah.
And Belle,
you know, Belle wrote about it too. You know, the thing is, it's like, so just like, because we got to get back to the book a bit because we've got 4 minutes left. Hang on a minute. There's a couple of questions that are women to blame for bad water.
That's not what I say. I addressed that.
You did. And there was another one which wasn't a question, it was a comment.
Yeah. It's just a comment.
Yeah. You
Linda
know,
Bellows said, I was active as a black
but you know,
woman
so like there's
30 years.
women from cultures mimicking white women while you have white women. It's like I had a conversation with my client, lovely young white woman yesterday, very damaged. You know, and she was talking about tanning, you know, and I said, you know, that the whole notion, you know, you have 500 or 1,000 years of white women not going into the sun, of light skin, of mixed women not going into the sun so that they can be as white as possible to show that they're not from the lower classes or peasants or tainted with a sooty brush, to 1920s Coco Chanel turning that around by, you know, we can be, and we don't have to be fat anymore. We can be thin to show that we've got so much we don't need to eat, you know, and we've got so much leisure time we can lie around in the sun, you know. So that, and she was like a total fascist, and that's where tanning and being slim come from, you know.
Well, you know, I'm loving these comments.
I'm gonna take a second to read this poem.
Okay.
If I can. So it's called Ceremony for Completing a Poetry Reading. So I want to dedicate this to our ceremony for completing a discussion about a book. This is a giveaway poem. You have come gathering. You have made a circle with me of the places where I have wandered. I want to give you the first daffodil opening from the earth I have sown, to give you warm loaves of bread, baked in soft mounds like breasts. In this circle, I pass each of you a shell from our mother sea. Hold it to your spirit and hear the stories she will tell you. I have wrapped your faces around me, a warm robe. Let me give you ribbon work leggings, dresses sewn with elk teeth, moccasins woven with red and sky blue porcupine quills. I give you blankets woven of flowers and roots. Come closer. I have more to give. This basket is very large. I have stitched it of your kind words. Here is a necklace of feathers and bones, a sacred meal of choke cherries. Take this mask of bark which keeps out the evil ones. This basket is only the beginning. There is something in my arms for all of you. I offer you this memory of sunshine seen through ice crystals. Here, an afternoon of looking into the sea from high rocks. Here, a red-tailed hawk circling over our heads. One of its feathers drops for your hair. May I give this to you, round stone, which holds an ancient spirit. This stone will soothe you. Within this basket is something you've been looking for all of your life. Come take it. Take as much as you want. I give you seeds of a new moon, of a new way. I give you the moon shining on a fire of singing women. I give you the sound of our feet dancing. I give you the sound of our thoughts flying. I give you the sound of peace, moving into your faces and sitting down. Come, this is a giveaway poem. I cannot go home until you have taken everything and the basket which held it. When my hands are empty, I will be full.
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 I love it. Are we out of time?
I think
Are we?
so.
Okay.
So I always love chatting with you, Suzanne.
The same here. There's so much to all of this, like literally, it is. I guess we're going to go into breakout to
I guess we are.
get a little bit more specific. I loved it. I loved it.
Lakesh.
I know. You know what we need to, finding some other books, where the diaspora, we can hear from the diaspora,
Yeah.
I can talk about just
Nuff.
I remember
there's enough books.
That's right. I love it.
Nuff. Love you too, my dear sister.
Trying to